Yeah, I never know how to start when it's not live, but maybe that's how I'll start. Hello, my name is Sam Irvin, and we are into it. This is Asheville 8 Note, Asheville 8 parentheses PM Note, the weekly, usually live stream that I host in Asheville in my studio, Irvin Music Studio. Really say Irvin and Asheville a lot at the top of each of these shows. And what else do I do this show for? To have on friends, to catch up with old friends. Like today, I've got Rawls on, and we are deep in synthland. We spent the last hour or two setting up a bunch of cables and noisemakers and such like that. So we're gonna chat for an hour and then jam for an hour, such as the format of this show. I do this show to catch up with old friends, to practice plugging in all those cables and including the audio visual. We got these fancy mics that Lou brought. He's a real audio pro. I'm excited to squeeze him for all of his sound intelligence. Sound, no pun intended, but yeah, double entendre there. His intelligence is sound, based in a lot of lifelong research. He assured me that he won't say anything that's incorrect at all during our time together. I'm just putting the pressure on. I'm just kidding. We're going to have a chill talk. This is a casual sort of show. What else do I say at the top of this show? It's available as a podcast, hopefully you're watching this on YouTube. Some of them are live, and I take them down and edit them together and post them in a more complete, refined way. But I guess I'll have the opportunity to do this. This one's pre-recorded, and it'll be, crystal clear right when we post it up. There's a huge rack of awesome technology across the room that's going to help ensure that it sounds beautiful and crystal clear. We're gonna make some really, really awesome sound design sort of stuff today. This studio serves as a hub for my private lessons, my event entertainment, and sound production. I'm primarily a classical guitarist, but worked at Moog for 5 years. Moog Music Incorporated, where I met Lou. We worked down in the factory together, putting together these synthesizers, many of which we're going to use today. I enjoy teaching and I enjoy performing, but I also really enjoy turning knobs and making noise and tinkering. I mean, that's really the major passion, is to do something. We were talking about it off air, create something new, and not do the repetitive stuff over and over. So, when you're messing around with all this tech, some of it is rote, figuring it out, reading manuals, learning about different configuration possibilities and different utilities. But once you start experimenting creatively, you never really end up making the same noises twice. And those endless possibilities, I think, are really at the center of what so many people find interesting about synth and sound design. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So without further ado, let's get Lou Rawls on here. And here will be guest intro music that I will put in and post. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, Lou, thanks for coming on.
You might want to remind your viewers and listeners to like and subscribe the channel.
That's right. That should be part of the routine up top. One tradition of the show is checking that I'm actually making sound and coming through, but it's not live, so just got to cross my fingers.
Thanks for having me on the Wednesday night jam on a daytime.
Of course, yeah. Should we reveal what day we're recording this?
No, that's okay. We'll keep it in the can.
Okay, it could, or it might be Wednesday. It might not be Wednesday.
It might be earlier in the week. It might be later in the week. We'll just leave the mystery out there.
Absolutely. It's certainly not later than you're seeing this. That's one sort of limitation as to when we're recording this. Yeah, like and subscribe. I'm going to make an associated Patreon account at some point. So if you're watching this way in the future, maybe get on board with that. Check out the Irvin Music Studio Patreon. And you have an Instagram that we could plug up right
That's
at the
right.
top
I'm
of the show.
also on YouTube as Project 7 Sound, and I'm also on Instagram as Project 7 Sound. I'm also on TikTok as Project 7 Sound. Got them all synced up, but they all have slightly different feeds.
Showing off these, incredible collection of sound processing units that you collect and utilize at events like the Equinox that's coming up.
That is a local psytrance event put on by local Touch Samadhi group. This is our fall party. It's outdoors. It's a quadraphonic tops. There'll be more information in the information link, the description. It's out at Deerfield, September 22nd through 24th. It's mostly DJs, but there's a whole second stage with some live acts, dub, down tempo, some like electronic improv, grooviness, stuff like that. But then dance floor is mostly trance and techno, 4 on the floor, 140 to 150 BPM.
Yeah, cool. And you're rocking the sound system for the dance floor?
Yes. I do the sound for the main stage at the Fall Festival. It's usually a collab effort, so me and some other folks, try to assemble 50 to 80,000 watts and a variety of subwoofers.
That's loud, people. It's
full and it's thick sounding, and it's full spectrum response. That's what we're going for with our horn loaded and point source loudspeakers. So part of my channel is my experience working with point source audio systems, as well as working with horn loaded loud systems, as well as doing documentation for events and sharing what I know. So usually for each show, I brought a visual aid because we went camping last weekend with the 50,000 watt configuration of the sound system. So this is the sound packet from last week's show. So the front cover is the routing. I'll send you the images in the PDF later on.
Yeah, I can plug those in.
But we got like a power plan, like the two main power circuits. We got a 2-pole 50 amp breaker and a 2-pole 30 amp feeding the sub amp. And then we go to 100 amp Motion Labs for all the tops. We got the routing flow for the money channel, the signal processing. This is the actual copy from the show with all the distances laid out. We use a tape measure, and then we use Smart to get it in the ballpark, and that helps us do the time and phase alignment.
Did you mention quadraphonic, right? That it's not just stereo, but rather there's front and back.
That's kind of the unique thing that I like to do for dance parties is a variation on the quad or the 4-point system. But usually for DJs, they're only in stereo most of the time. So we reverse the rear tracks with the left and the right. So when you stare at the front, you get a left and right stereo image. And when you invert, you look at it and you get a left and right stereo image.
You get the same left, whether you're
it's always
facing
on your
front or back.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I call it reverse XY.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit of pan control in there as well. I make a scaled illustration, how I can sometimes, the layout, and then I come up with approximate location for the loudspeakers ahead of time, and that helps me plan exactly what cables to use, as well as think about where to put the measurement mic and the sequence of measurement. Then I have the DSP plan for the mains, like what's going on in the master DBX DR4800 drive rack, which is for the mains. And then we also have a backup for the DBX V360B, which is running the DJ monitors. Then we have a page for the amp DSP, Linnea Research DNA 20K4 Pro amps. Do a virtual rack layout in advance to be sure that it's going to stack up evenly and everything will still be there.
And these racks include things like compressors and limiters and EQ, things that are like refining and mastering the sound, right?
Yes.
And this requires a lot of power. You mentioned that at the very beginning.
Sort of. I got rid of my 30-year-old amps and I've moved to the Linnea Research amps. And you can regulate how much power they consume from the mains current in the software. So you can limit it down to as low as 8 amps on 120 volts. But most of the time, it's 4 channels of 5,000 watts at 2 ohms. So most of the time, we don't need 5,000 watts at 2 ohms. So the amp is just idling. It's got a lot of reserve power and reserve current. So this past weekend, we were driving, let's say 8 double 18s all at once, and the amp was pulling 6 amps peak. At sound check, it was pulling 3 to 4 amps at 240 most of the night. So not that much.
Yeah.
But that's the advantage of overkill. It helps us maintain quality and fidelity.
That's right. If you're pushing the speakers too much, you might get distortion or whatever the minimal version of that is, right? Like if not fuzz, but you get a lack of clarity if you're pushing it at all.
Now, one of the things I specialize in is I work with live sound for DJs. So most DJs don't know much about sound except being like a bedroom DJ or being a wedding DJ. And so what I do is I set up a sound system with the right gain structure so that the DJ can't ever clip the PA or max the output or clip any of the speakers or clip the signal chain or interfere with the event promoters and the property owners. And so we use a combination of mostly just intelligent gain structure. Go ahead and set the DJ mixer where it's turned most of the way up and then feed it into a leveler and then add compression or limiting as needed. And that's independent control of the sound system volume. And a separate controller.
So the DJ, if he wants it to be louder, he's got...
they can try and turn it up, and that's why we try to give them Texas headphones, like really big DJ monitors. So this past weekend, we used 10,000 watts just on the monitors. So we had 2 powered 12-inch two-way tops, and then 2 double 18s per side underneath with 4,000 watts a side, so 5,000 watts total per each side of the DJ monitor. And usually that's enough.
And are you with if you're pumping this much sound, are you wearing ear protection the entire time? And do you recommend that for anybody going to a festival like this?
Well, I try to set it up where you don't have to wear earplugs the whole time. It's strongly suggested and recommended. I can't speak about other festivals. At other festivals I go to, I always wear hearing protection. But when I'm running my own PA, I try to make it not loud enough that it's going to damage anybody's hearing long term because, typically DJ events are 12, 24, 36, 48, 72 hours. And so sometimes somebody could be in front of the sound system, more than 8 hours in a day. And so that's one of the techniques too, is you just don't turn the highs up as loud as you turn up the bass, or you limit the highs separately than the lows.
Because the highs are a little bit more dangerous for...
Well, it sounds loud.
Oh, right.
We want the bass. We want the bass to feel good, but we don't necessarily want the highs to hurt our ears. And so that's the main trick is just don't turn the highs up as loud. So loud for the tops would be like 100 dBA, but loud for the subs is like 125 dBc.
Okay.
So we're always running like a haystack. That's part of what gets it feeling good as well. Of course, then when you're doing the time and delay, you're going to have a different virtual acoustic crossover point separately, the electrical crossover point. So if the tops are padded down 6 dB, but the subs are like plus 10 dB acoustically, then the actual acoustic crossover is going to be substantially higher, even if the electrical frequency is lower, because it has to do with where the curves overlap, and with one moves up, the portion where they intersect also moves up in frequency. So we do more than one trick with asymmetrical crossovers and filtering, time delay, offset, to try and get all the sound from all the frequencies to line back up in the same spot on the dance floor and blend coherently with all the other, let's call them virtual images that we're trying to present. So there'll be a stereo image out of the front tops, out of the rear tops, out of the outfill, the side fill, rear fill, and the DJ monitors. We're trying to get all those sound waves in time with the right phase angle so that they add together instead of canceling.
Yeah, that we talked quite a bit about this last time I saw you, and it's fascinating but difficult to visualize or think about. You've got a lot of helpful images and some software on your computer that allows you to test different spots of, maybe just a sine wave or something simple to make sure that the various speakers are interacting in the way that you want them to, right? And that has to do with the proximity. If you've got them, you're right in the middle of them, that's a different image than if you're closer to one than the other, right? Mm-hmm. And so the bigger space that you're trying to cover and the more speakers that you're trying to line up, the more difficulty there is, the more variables and the more you have to accommodate, like you said, with offsets and time delays from speaker to speaker, right?
Yeah. This handbook also has a couple other reference files that I printed, like on cardioid subwoofer arrays and array coupling, mixer cue sheets.
Yeah, cool. And you're cool linking off to this little packet?
Yeah, I'll send you a PDF here. Limiter settings, subwoofer time and distance by frequency, James Blair's Techno Genius Memorial, and then also the Smart Elegant sequence. So the numbers on this list help me refer to the layout. So typically what we're going to do is we're going to go front top to front sub. So we're going to measure, and we can use any program source because the analyzer doesn't care, but typically we use pink noise because it's equal energy per frequency, but not per octave. So it kind of rolls off the highs, but it's still got all the frequencies present. And we use uncorrelated or mono pink noise. We don't use stereo because we want the same thing going in and coming out. So the way the analyzer works is you put a omnidirectional condenser in front of the PA, and the sound card compares the electrical signal either from the pink noise generator itself built into the software or any external audio signal. You feed it in the sound card, and then the mic also picks up the sound from the speakers out front. And there's a delay finder. It computes the distance
Creating
offset.
a bit of a loop, right?
Right. Well, the laptop is comparing what goes into the PA electrically to what comes out acoustically.
Yes, right.
So it's looking at time, frequency, and then it takes it apart with multiple FFTs, fast Fourier transforms. It does some calculus. It looks at the area under the curve, and it gets us from one way of looking at sound to like 4 or 5 ways of looking at sound. So the first thing it does is it's kind of like playing the piano. You got to practice hands separate and then you put it together. So you got to measure the top and then you mute, unmute, measure the sub. And then you go back and you play them both together at the same time. And it should be a coherent summed response. If not, then you would want to change the filtering type, the delay time, the phase, angle, offset, or some other characteristic and iterate again. Now, the tricky part is the delay finder can only lock on the high frequencies, but the subs are typically what we want to move around. So it's usually like measure the tops and then measure the subs and then change the tops and then measure the subs again and see if they're closer or not. So it depends.
And do you repeat this process from increased distances from the top and sub that you're measuring?
Okay. Well, usually at the end of a sound system setup, there's not much time and we're running behind. So if we get to do smart at all, we might have 20 minutes.
Okay.
Unless we planned, to do a good job in advance and have plenty of time left over. So if we had, a full 30 minutes to an hour, what we do is we measure like right front top to right front sub, and we put the mic like right in front, and then we would move the mic to the center like of the dance floor, and then we would compare left and right sub to, the right hand top to the left hand top to be sure they're the same, verify symmetry. Audio is always a compromise. You can leverage symmetry when possible. The part we care about is the frequency crossover and the spatial crossover, and when we're designing to align.
And that's so interesting too to get to it, because this is so scientific, full of measurements and numbers and stuff, but that recognition of the imperfection gets talked a lot about on this show, and musicians trying to play the best that they can, their instruments or whatever. And this is very much sort of an art form as well, like you're contributing to the performance, and it's like sound is always a compromise. Right. I think that's such a great quote.
Well, and
audio is always a compromise.
The goal here is to make the sound system as transparent as possible so that it in effect disappears and doesn't call attention to itself. Ideally, the original signal would just appear in space in front of you. That's the ultimate goal, is that you can't tell where the sound is coming from and you hear all of it all together at the same time.
Like if it's a bedroom DJ, right, and he's writing this music on headphones by himself, he's in the zone, you want that experience translated to the audience's experience, right?
Right. We're trying to convey all the signal into the PA. It's like a big fat pipe. It takes a lot to fill it up. When you have subwoofers that will reproduce 25 cycles per second, and the tops, they roll off around 18,000 cycles a second. So we are working with most of the full audio spectrum.
Yeah, 25 that's super low. That's as low as it gets.
Haven't measured it. I think lately, because I don't measure absolute response, I'm always looking for relative response. So back to the smart alignment for this setup. So
sure.
So we did the front tops, and then we moved the mic to the center, and then we measured the front Danley tapped horn subs to the left and right bass reflex subs, compare the phase angle there, and then we double check the arrival time from the rear tops, matches the front tops. Of course, we also try to take advantage of the Haas effect and make it just slightly behind the actual arrival time. So we
could you elaborate on that? What's the Haas effect?
The sound that your ears hears first, it assigns direction to. So like when you go to a really big stadium show, like Taylor's current Eras tour, there's a whole bunch of delay arrays at multiple places. So the way, instead of having, let's say this is the front and this is the rear delay. So when the sound comes out the front, instead of having the sound come out exactly to match the front time, you offset the delay, add extra 5 milliseconds of delay to the rear delays, and it makes them invisible.
Because when you hear something that's over here, you're also registering the sound that's behind you that's taken a while to get there. And like in just real life, so if somebody's talking to you or something.
It's a psychoacoustic phenomena. Your brain fills in that intelligibility part so that you can still understand the signal, but it assigns the directional cues to the sound that you hear first. It's an evolutionary response. So if you hear the front delays slightly before you hear the rear delays, you're going to think the sound is still coming from the front, but you're still going to hear the signal from the back. So that's what we're going for with the rear tops.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
It's just a little bit of extra flavor. But of course, when we're measuring stuff, we use a tape measure. But when we set up, it's like nighttime, we're moving hundreds of pounds of gear. We're trying to get it symmetrical, but sometimes we're still off by like 3 to 6 inches per side. So we capture that here.
And can I ask, what sort of distances cause phase issues? Is it in the inches or you can fix the phase issues with the delay of milliseconds inside the program?
We can change the individual cabinet speaker times in the processor, but usually if it's within 3 inches, I don't worry about it. Like if the left and the right side are off by 3 inches, I'm not going to worry about it. But if it's half a foot, maybe I'll get in and I'll tweak it just a hair. But most of the time, I just want to know what it is. So like last weekend, the front difference was 3 feet, 10 inches plus 2.5 inches. Oh, that was the left and the right difference. The left to the center was 3 foot 4 inches, and the right was 3 foot 9 inches. So a difference of 5 inches. So we decided to split it at some point. So instead of making it like exactly 4.521 milliseconds, with a delay offset for the center subs, it became 5.021 milliseconds. So the only it doesn't the time offset doesn't affect the tops as much as it does the subs. Since we're using tapped horns, Danley tapped horns in the center, they're much more powerful than our bass reflex double 18s. We offset the different subtypes physically by at least 8 feet. And that's enough where the timing differences are large enough that the phase angle development around the bass is not going to interfere directly with the sub. We can control it as like 2 different units.
I think that makes sense. Whereas if they were right next to each other...
Yeah, you don't want to mix different types of subs because they're going to interfere. And they're going to interfere in the time domain, and you can't EQ that out. So it's going to cause frequency response anomalies. That's the funny thing they don't tell you in school, kids, about that audio is really fourth dimensional. And a whole lot of the characteristics that we hear come from the time effects.
Because time is the fourth dimension.
Right. Yeah. The audio is moving 1,125 feet per second.
And it explodes out spherically, right?
Kind of. It depends on the characteristics of the loudspeaker.
That's true. I guess they are directional. Yeah.
No transducer is perfect. I guess that's the reason why we have to do all this filtering in the first place, is because maybe we should mention that audio is very specific sensation. Our vision, we see across 1 octave of electromagnetic spectrum, but our hearing, we hear across 10 different octaves of sound spectrum frequencies. So it's there's not one type of transducer that can overcome the laws of physics to reproduce very low bass and extreme high treble as well. So typically for concert loud systems, 4 or 5 different frequency bands are used: tweeters, mids, lows, and then subs. So in order to do that, you have to take apart one audio signal that has all the frequencies and split it into 4, one just for the tweeters, one for the mids, one for the low, and one for the subs, and then put it back together after it's gone through amplification, signal routing, and recombination mechanically in the loudspeaker system. So
yeah, interesting. Do those frequency bands overlap, I would imagine?
they do in the crossover region. That's why we care about the crossover. Now I'm talking about the crossover between like the ultra highs down to the mids, and then from the mids to the lows, and then like lows to the subs. So like subs to woofers would be like 85 to 125. Mids depend on your loudspeaker system, but anywhere as low as like 500 or 800 to like 1 to 2 kilohertz. And then some tweeters like 1.5 kilohertz all the way up to 20K. Function 1 tweeters, you know, they're notoriously crossed over above the mids, crossed over around 6 kilohertz and higher. It depends. We haven't even gotten into all our different favorite types of loudspeaker systems, but that's okay.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Last
There's
time a big point of yours was this contention that you got or against line array systems as opposed to the point.
The point source. Yeah. I'm not going to dwell on it too much because, you know, the fundamentals of concert touring audio and economics are grounded in capitalism, but it's capitalism. That's why we have line arrays, because audio crews have gotten smaller and tour packages have gotten more expensive. And so the vertical column hang overcomes some of the characteristics of point source loudspeakers the way they were deployed in the 80s and 90s, which is not really a point source. You just get a whole bunch of horizontal stacks and fill them up. I'm thinking about Shoko Prism, like out in Ozfest 2003. You know, it's like 8 tops wide and 3 tops deep per side. And each one is like JBL horns and like 2 15s. It's a 3-way top box, double 15. You know, you get 30 or 40 tops aside, it's going to sound rock and roll loud, but it's not necessarily going to sound good because of all the cross comb filtering and interference. So let's say that point source stacks arrays in the 80s and 90s weren't great, but Tony Andrews, who was working for Turbo Sound in the 80s and 90s, developed Floodlight and Flashlight for the Pink Floyd tour, was really the first unicellular point source array with horn-loaded subwoofer management and all-in-one touring package that came on the line. So
now, did Pink Floyd as a band care about audio quality in that way to ensure that, or do you think it was sort of the representation that they had, like the organization?
I've heard that Pink Floyd does care about sound quality. I don't know any guys in Pink Floyd. They're sort of really before my time. I know some people that work with the Floyd, but like that's a little bit beyond me. But I have read the literature because I was a big fan of Turbo Sound, and that horn-loaded point stuff became Function 1 later on when Tony left and started his own gig. Anyway, that's a roundabout way of getting back to line arrays, which is a sound kind of the same horizontally, but they have a completely different character and tonal response from the front of the venue to the back of the venue. So you're never hearing just one line array element. You're always hearing one line array element at one frequency interacting with all the other line array elements at all the other frequencies. And that's true for everywhere in the venue. It's less noticeable if you walk left and right horizontally because each line array element is designed to cover narrow vertical and wide horizontal. But when you walk front to back, you'll notice it. And it also means that the subwoofers are typically not aligned, or they are evenly misaligned everywhere in the venue. So audio is always a compromise. The one thing that line arrays do really well is overcome the inverse square law. So instead of rolling off at 6 decibels per doubling of distance, they only roll off at 3 per doubling of distance. But that's only when the line array is 12, 16, 18 feet long enough to actually become a line source. So if you see 4 cabinets or it's longer than or shorter than 8 feet, it's not a real line array.
Okay.
It's not actually taking the most advantage of the physics of the box. But
what about, are you aware, you brought up Taylor Swift's new
the current tour. Yeah, it's a big tour.
It's getting a lot of attention.
400 boxes. I love watching the live stream on TikTok on the weekends. Yeah.
Are those line arrays?
Yeah, she's using L acoustics, probably K1. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or I mean, it could be D&B. I don't know. Show Motion is the trucking company. I follow them on TikTok.
Okay, cool.
So they only have one stage this year. It's not like the Michael Jackson stage where they had 3 and they leapfrog. So, they can get the whole thing down in less than 24 hours after the show's over. And then it's a 3-day build. So it's 1 day out and 3 days in. And
are those overlapping too, do you think? So they're setting up a stage while she's performing the night before somewhere else?
No, they only have one.
They only have the one stage. Okay.
They're only doing Friday, Saturday, Sundays.
I see. Gotcha.
That's part of the format. But then they're outside and they get wet.
Right. Yes, I've been seeing the rain. But that's interesting that all the sound equipment can survive these giant downpours.
Yeah, they're pros. Now, obviously, you wouldn't see Function 1 got into the bigger cabinets game because the problem with point source is if you want louder SPL at distance, you're still subject to the 6 dB drop off with the doubling of distance. So beyond a certain point, you need a louder original source. And so Function 1 came out with the Evo after the resolution. They're a little bit bigger tops. But I feel like Danley Sound Labs still has Function 1B in terms of the point source game because the tweeters, the mids, and the lows all fire into the same unified aperture and opening called the synergy horn. And there's a passive crossover built into the top box between the tweeter and the mid and the low. And it's got passive active protection and limiting built in, so you can't fry it. And I feel like that's the way to go because then there's really only one time and phase line point, and that's tops to subs. But I don't own a full Danley PA. I just own 3 Danley subs.
Okay.
Gotcha. I use the Yorkville Unity U15B box, which has a horn, the Unity horn, which is licensed from SPL, which Thomas Danley worked for SPL during that time, and it has it shares a number of characteristics with the synergy horn, but it's not a synergy horn. It's mids and highs only. So Yorkville added a 15-inch on the front, but it's the horn works from 300 to 20K. I think it still sounds pretty good. So it's good enough for now, and it's all I could afford.
Yeah, there are all the sorts of these limitations, right? Even on the biggest shows, it sounds like. I want to take 2 seconds real quick just to take a breath. We're going to continue our talk in a second, but I want to stand up. And did you start that stopwatch? Because I did not check out what time it was when we started.
Yeah. I started the stopwatch, and it says we are at 33 minutes.
Oh, great. Exactly the halfway point. So I forgot to turn the overheads off, and that's been distracting me. So let me do that real quick.
Okay, no worries.
And we'll edit this out, perhaps, or we'll just keep it slappy because that's how I'm doing it. Okay.
The overheads,
I know, yeah. Our complexion is gonna be weird. There we go. Do you need anything? You good?
I'm good.
Feeling good?
Wow, it's already half over. Dang, it goes fast.
It does, doesn't it?
It goes really fast.
Yeah, when I started this, some friends, some musicians were like, 2 hours, that's such a long show, that's crazy, who's going to talk? But and then some musicians that are coming on are sort of nervous about, like, I don't know if I can talk for like a whole hour, but it really does fly by. It seems to be like a unanimous consensus that it's pretty easy to fill the space. There's a lot to talk about.
Certainly.
You have a lot to talk about, not to take too hard of a left turn from the arrays, but you've been reading pro audio magazines and stuff from a very young age.
How did I get into sound? Yes. So my father worked in the basement of the library at a prominent seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. And he was the audio video director. Before there was IT, there was AV services. So part of the seminary, they had a music school. So they had extensive musical library like sheet music, but they also had records, tapes, and CDs, and they had musical publications that reviewed classical music, and a whole bunch of those were stereo review, stereophile, audio, hi-fi news and record review. So at some point when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I discovered the Stereo Review archive was accessible to me in the basement of the library. So I would check out, like 1977 and 1978 and go read it at a Carol for a couple hours. Let's see, I was a latchkey kid. Both of my parents are musicians. My mother taught middle school, high school band for 30 plus years and played in like 3-4 groups a week. And so I would commute from school to seminary because there was the seminary band practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They played in chapel on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I eventually joined the band too. I started playing trombone when I was 10. I started Suzuki piano when I was 5. My mother didn't give me a choice to practice. You will practice before you get to play with your toys.
I am bummed you didn't bring the trombone today. You mentioned...
you got a valve trombone on the wall, but
maybe
we'll have to get a different COVID cover for the hornbill or something.
Oh, that's right.
I haven't practiced. My chops aren't that great.
Yeah.
But
imperfection pervades. It's okay. But
my folks, let's see, what else did they do? My dad wrote history documentaries and had the idea, and then would go out and shoot it on 3/4 tape in the late 70s, early 80s. He would write the script and then hire people to do narration. We as a family would pile in the van. Somewhere along the way, I ended up running audio for video stuff and then doing boom sound. I guess since my folks were into videography and photography so much, I just gravitated towards sound because it was what was left over, what was next.
Yeah.
But also, my mother has like a perfect pitch. She can hear like a bell ring and tell you the exact note it is. I can't tell you the note, but I can tell you about what frequency it is.
Yeah,
through ear training. So I don't know. She's probably on the spectrum too for hearing things and being sensitive to audio. Let's just say. So I think maybe I picked up some of that too with the Suzuki method and hearing training and learning technique before you learn how to read music. Somewhere in the buying equipment for the home documentary studio, my folks ended up with early Yamaha digital DAW-less MIDI studio, RX-15, the DX7, and I forgot the 4-channel MIDI track computer that connects to a Zenith. Anyway, we had some of that. We had early tech. We had the internet. I knew how to play video games and dial up to the library card catalog system or log into the public library. So, growing up, there was just gear around the house, and I was encouraged to play with it. And so when my folks would go places, I would play with the audio gear. And eventually, I found enough cables that I could hook up the sound system in the living room to the sound system in the studio upstairs to, like the radio in the basement. And that's what I got into, and I've just sort of kept on going from there.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, when I started this show, I believe you're going to be episode 66 or 67.
Yeah,
and
it's great to see the evolution of the show and how many people want to get excited about talking about sound. And also, you've got a lot of stimulation here in this basement studios. Damn, so there's like a drum set.
A lot to talk about. Yeah, a lot
of guitars, instruments. Yeah, as a band director for middle school and high school, my mother always had at least one of every instrument in the basement so that prospective students could stop by at any time and we'd give you a demo or a lesson or try and figure out, are you better match for a French horn or for trumpet or maybe clarinet?
That's pretty cool. I'm on my way. I don't know if I'll get a French horn down here. I don't know how to play that. But I was going to say that you were the first person I hit up, like, how do I get this audio to work?
It depends. There's more than one way to do it. It depends on your budget, your level of complexity, your level of technical proficiency, but also, trial and error. Learning curve. Everybody's got to come up with your own personal workflow. So when I talk about like smart and how to do sound, I set the DSP. That's part of my workflow that's evolved over time.
Yeah, and a lot of that's just solving problems, right? Like, I need this to sound clearer, and some stuff is obvious once you think about it. At first you were encouraging me to get some outboard gear, but I was sort of limited on the budget. And, you said, what about filters inside of OBS? It's like, oh, duh. Yeah.
Plugins,
add
software,
some compression, get all that going. Yeah. And then, just trying to route it through Pro Tools to get the perfect mix the first time through, I've sort of given up on that, and taking it out and mixing it again gives me more control, without an engineer. But yeah, just routing. You came over, and I had gotten an expansion for my interface, and we were trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and calling tech support.
Yeah. Yikes. Now getting the drums permanently mic'd up.
Oh yeah, that helps.
And the loop pedal, yeah, it's really nice. So what I'm trying to get to is that like
you're the next Tame Impala.
That's what I'm trying to get
Live
at.
in the basement.
Yeah. Tame Impala, if you're watching, you're welcome here anytime.
Hey Kevin, we got fat bass. We like
do.
overstayer too.
I've got the big Bose bass over there. It's not
We got
big,
some Moog
actually.
synths.
It's sort of, and a lot of Moog stuff.
We got some DBX compressors.
We do today.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to come back next week.
Oh, I could bring a different rack next week when we remaster it.
Oh, right. The money rack, everybody.
Money rack, the money channel.
The money channel, pardon me. So right now the center of my routing system is the Focusrite and its interface, that whole system inside the computer, inside the box. I've got a mixer that's serving as like a brain for my synths, and I noticed that really the center of your system is your mixer, right? Like when you're creating
this system
music,
is set up around the mixer, yes.
Not your...
But also the home system is set up around using the mixer for monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like 2 or 3 things. I'll describe my home setup. One, I like to watch YouTube, and YouTube sounds bad a lot of the time. So
that's true.
I run from my Octacapture out, SPDIF out into the digital money channel for saturation, compression, limiting, dynamics adjustment, that kind of stuff. And then I monitor through the mixer out of that, depending on whether I'm monitoring the reference level SPL Mercury digital analog converter, or I would just want to listen to like the Crane song, or I can switch back and forth to the Roland Octacapture analog outs, or I can listen to the Max BCL out. So that's like one type of playback. Feature that we have is just playback with real-time enhancement with the external hardware. So the hardware, it's like a plug-in that runs on a chip in the box, in the rack unit. So the Crane song, it's a tube emulator, and it adds analog dither. So there's a knob for pentode, knob for triode, knob for tape. Tape knob adds 5th and 7th. The pentode is the 3rd harmonic, and the triode is 2nd harmonic.
Oh, okay.
The
triode is 2nd harmonic?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
The Max BCL is a Renaissance compressor with electro and opto mode. There's the Max bass synth, and there's the L2 limiter. So it runs a plug-in, and the trade-off is latency and time. So it takes like 3 to 5 milliseconds for the audio to go in and out, depending on sample rate, bit depth, and whether it's analog or digital. I keep, if a source is digital, I kind of keep it digital all the way until we need it as analog, either to listen to it or to change it somehow. But I just added an analog routing rack, analog mastering, that I haven't gotten to play with that much because I just finished building it this spring. So I am getting into analog audio mastering, but it's also, I bought a Dutch Audio IM 2.1 insert switcher. So it holds 8 different analog effects chains. So you connect all your compressors and levelers and EQs to this thing, and then just punch them in or out. You can change the sequence.
Very cool.
It's got built-in mid-side. So I didn't bring the analog rack, but I only brought the Neve rack.
That's one of those things that only sounds exciting after you get into signal routing, right? Like 2 years ago, I'd be like, so what's the big deal?
What's the big deal? It means it's just like using a patch bay, except without any cables. You just press the buttons and
it saves so much time, so much like it's freedom in a box. I'm trying.
Also have synthesizers at home, and I connect them to the mixer.
That's right, yeah. And
I
those
use
probably
a bunch
go
of
into the
compressors.
analog stuff.
Yeah,
I would hope.
And I
you were
use,
lamenting about how the more gear you buy, the less time you have
to actually right. Like even with this setup, it took me like 2 or 3 hours yesterday to come up with the analog routing setup and get it going.
This setup today.
Yeah, that
we're
we
about
brought.
to see. Yeah.
And then I spent 2 or 3 hours playing music with it and practicing. But that's sometimes the thing. I notice that mostly with Eurorack. The longer and more money I spend on that, the less music I end up making for the course. Part of my philosophy too is I get bored with doing the same thing over and over again, and I get bored, clicking a mouse on a computer to make music. So I am DAWless, and my Eurorack collection is mostly trying to become a player piano. So that's my goal for it, is to have it generate sounds all by itself. Like noisy stuff or chill stuff or relaxing stuff, or maybe even eventually some techno stuff someday. I do like techno and trance, but I also like all kinds of music.
Yeah, it's difficult to get those triggers to vary enough, I think, in order for it to stay interesting but not get too chaotic. It's a real balance of adding color and nuance and variability, but without it spiraling into nonsense.
Well, I wanted another lifelong passion. I'm not necessarily into the flavor module of the month and buying and selling and trading them. I only get stuff I think I'm going to keep for a long time and ultimately use in a way that's conducive to my workflow. But also, there's more than one synthesizer factory in town. So I'm collecting some of the Make Noise stuff, all the Make Noise stuff, and then notorious Moog troll Paul Schreiber of Synthesis Technology. Once I learned about him and his relationship to MOTM and Synthesis Technology and Robert Rich, I was like, oh, this guy makes a bunch of my favorite tools. So I've been collecting the Synthesis Technology modules.
Synthesis Technology module. And those are Eurorack?
Eurorack is and
Make Noises too, right?
Yes. And then Paul used to do MOTM, which is 5U, which is like legacy modular.
Oh,
it has a different power config.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But it's the same size, similar front panels to legacy modular. So I've been collecting that. I've been collecting utilities, and I was collecting, Zach and Joe's module from End Times. Some other guys from Asheville Synthesizer Club created some modules.
I really need to tune in to that or go to the bottle shop. What's
it's
that schedule?
It's Wednesday nights now. They also do a competing jam. Right. Right. Sorry, Cry. Sorry, Jane.
Yeah.
Happy birthday. Anyway, there's a vibrant synthesizer community in Asheville. And, the first couple of years of the Synth Club, I was bringing sound when we would meet at the bar next to Moog because they didn't have a sound system.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like owning cables so that people can bring things together so that we can all become unified in electricity, sound, and vibration and community.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help people put things together, whether it's time and phase alignment for the loudspeakers or having extra channels on a mixer so that more people can patch in, or, like patching in things unconventionally. We're going to do a little jam with the kick drum mic and the subwoofer a little bit later.
Right.
We'll talk about that some more later, but
that's cool. Getting some feedback through this kick drum mic.
Yeah.
No kick drum involved.
No kick drum.
Just a kick drum mic. It's fit for the sub frequencies, right? That?
Well, it's a large dynamic mic. So it's got it's designed, you can pick up the subtlety of breath, or you could blow on it, or you could just put it next to the sub, or you could hit the back of it. You could play the mic like an instrument.
Yeah.
And, it's like a sound guy. Typically, we want to get feedback out of the PA and out of the sound system. Well, one of my acts is to just put feedback sounds into the PA or use electric distortion against itself, or use a delay pedal on a pre-fade send back to itself with levels of compression so that it can self-saturate. Or, every effect, if it's on its own send and return, you can make a matrix mixer, and then you don't have to change the physical patch cables to change the effects routing chain. It's sort of what we're doing a little bit here with the setup. So we could talk about all the crap we brought today.
Yeah. Let's get into what we're about to do. I will say though that there is something really special about getting together to play electronic instruments. Like, now I've been doing all sorts of jams on this show. The jam bandy guys are really fun to play with because that's their thing, and there's something coming together about that. when somebody can really rock and just groove in that way. And it's similar to, or like I get a similar feeling with, Paul Gaeta and Rob Gray have been on the show. TJ and Rosser is about to come back on.
Nice.
Yeah. And So some other Moog guys, I'm definitely missing some people. Deanna Hodges was a great sort of looper.
Zach Brown?
Zach Downs?
Zach Downs.
Yes. Yeah, he's been on, but in the format of Dino Birds, where we're rocking like a little improv group, so less knob turny. But yeah, it's really fun to get into that space and just start turning knobs, and it's a lot more free even than the open jams with the jam bandy guys, right? Because you're still sort of stuck in a key or something. When you're just exploring sound design, it's very Cajun, and like everything is cool.
Yeah. So I guess that's we should say that I started buying gear to learn how to use the gear. To get better at the craft. So like, it's not my goal necessarily to make tracks or become rich and famous or become the next Tiesto.
Yeah.
As a bedroom producer or whatever. That's not my goal. My goal is just to entertain myself and have fun and connect with other people. And, occasionally I remember to hit record too.
That's right.
But lately, not that much. So
you've got a SoundCloud out there, right? With some sound design stuff.
Yeah. The original stuff is from 2015, and then last year I uploaded the best 2-minute clips from 2020 or 2021 from the Eurorec.
Yeah,
some of the noise experiments. It's mostly just
ambient
noise
stuff. Yeah.
Or I don't know how to use a VCA yet, so that's why it's just drones the whole time.
How do you start and stop?
Yeah. Well, we'll get into that. So I also have a bunch of MIDI gear, and I brought the MIDI gear because it's still got presets in it from 20 years ago and all the patterns that I wrote in the late 90s and early aughts. So the beginning of the setup is the Yamaha RM1X, and MIDI out of that goes to a 5-way hub. One of the MIDI outs goes to a Korg ER1 drum machine, a TB3 acid emulator, Megnos, Zero Coast, Jomox kick drum, and then the 5th out goes to a MIDI Sport 4-way hub to go to, the Model D, the Matriarch, a Mother or two, the Model 1. Yeah,
I'll be plugging that into whatever I'm not playing, really.
And then a Mother 32 for MIDI to CV and click. Right, so the audio routing of that goes into a APB Pro Rack House mixer, a DIB-ring, the compressor rack. There's an EQ that we're not using. There's a TC Electronics M1 reverb that we are using. So we got 2 digital effects chains. And then I have the new Asheville Music Tools delay pedals that Rick made that we're using for analog delay. We got the regular edition feeding the special edition, and then going back through a compressor on both the input and the output. The Zero Coast has some cross patching just to make it sound less like the default no coast patch. So it sounds kind of gnarly. There's some frequency modulation going on. Just trying to get it to sound not like a preset.
Yeah, you got to mess with the presets a little bit.
Yeah, and that's essentially what this act is. The RM1X has a whole bunch of preset phrases stored as MIDI data. We're going to be executing those on and off to different external hardware. So I've got a list of my favorite songs, my favorite drum tracks, and some other favorite sounds, and try and improvise the live set together here for a couple different songs.
Yeah, and these are jams, of course. So we are improvising. We're making it up. We're finding, we're going to find these moments together, I think, where we lock in.
That's right, and MIDI clock certainly helps.
That's right.
So on the audio routing, the RM1X is a stereo audio out. The Jomox kick is mono. No coast is mono. The analog delay is mono. And the kick mic is mono. ER1 is stereo. TB3 stereo. And the TC-M1 is stereo. We're using parallel and insert compression. So each instrument has an insert compressor. And then the non-reverb chain goes through a FMR RNC. The reverb goes through a RNLA, a really nice leveling amp. And then all of that goes through the master bus insert, which is the Level Lisa from RC Sound. It's not a compressor, it's just a leveler. When it gets loud, it just turns it down a little.
Okay.
And then we go into the Neve Portico 2 channel, which is a high pass, EQ, de-esser, compressor, and then saturator. So it's just doing a little bit of EQ and high frequency de-essing. We're barely hitting the threshold on the master bus compressor. We are doing a little saturation using Silk Red.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're trying not let it turn into mush.
Sounds like I'm not going to have to do much to the sound after the effect in the box.
Hard thing is like playing the MIDI and running the audio at the same time. So, I was inspired by, like Underworld. They have a massive 48 channel Mackie board setup and everything's going all at once, and then just play the mixer.
Yeah.
And then they have a whole nother split for the front of house guy, and he mixes it all separately. So they're really I think they're performing, but I don't know. We'll see. The goal with all the compressors is to keep the mud out and give us a polished sound so that even $200 toys from 20 years ago can sound okay.
I've got a good feeling about it. Now we're going to so I'm sending audio back to you for processing as well.
So we're doing separate submix with the Yamaha mixer, and then we have a stereo out from that's going into channels 5 and 6 on the mixer.
Oh, we're getting close. We're getting close, people, to jam time. So yeah, so we'll have my mix coming to you, but I might also capture my mix on the way.
Yeah, I think we should
Pro Tools, just so I can maybe have something else to mix.
4 channels.
Yeah,
in Pro Tools.
So we'll only have the 4 channels. Yeah.
Side, yep.
My Yamaha catches my I have all the synthesizers in the room running into a patch bay that I can also send to 3 different collections of effects pedals, all the mini Fogers, all the Moger Fogers, and then a miscellaneous pedal board. But we worked at Moog together. That's how we met, and I got discounts on the Moog stuff.
That's the reason to work for Moog.
That was the main reason to stay there for sure. And those discounts were gigantic. So yeah, I've got the Model D, the Matriarch, 2 Mothers, a DFAM,
every mini Foger,
every mini Foger and Moger Foger.
7 Moger Fogers. Oh, I guess you do have them all.
Yeah, I got them all, but I don't have the MIDI Murph, which is unfortunate because I can't program in my own
Oh, you got the regular Murph.
Yeah, that's such a unique pedal.
Yeah, I've got Moger Fogers too, but they stay at home.
You've got 4 delays, don't you, or something?
3
delays
MF103s
that are all sort of linked up.
Yeah, they're all insert on one another as its own instrument. Yeah. And then I have multed the CV going to a bunch of the same parameters. So I treat it like an instrument, and you get triplets out.
Yeah, cool. Yeah,
triple delay.
I've got a sound source of sitting up on top that I don't use that often, but I've got the Werkstatt standing by, so I could just send a really boring thing into all of the Moger Fogers and create that sort of
we ought to. I'm imagining 2 or 3 different jams we could do. We could play a MIDI song. We could improvise off another MIDI pattern and program our own beats. We could do the kick mic, and then we could do a effects song set. So maybe we should spend 15 minutes sort of in each of those domains.
I'm totally down. I'll follow your lead. I'm okay with stuff coming in and out sort of at random and a Groove Armada style, 20-minute gigantic thing.
Well, we got plenty of gear. I didn't bring all the gear, obviously.
No, you've got a ton of gear, yeah.
That's one of the issues too, is I don't really usually when I do sound, there's other DJs more eager to play than I am. I play a sound check. I play pink noise. Haha.
Yep.
That's my set too. So usually I want to help facilitate other people playing as well as with the live act. So most of the time my gear is studio gear. It stays home. So my Eurorack case isn't portable. My Moger Foger case isn't portable. The system is in transition. That's why I had the stuff pulled out and put away.
Yeah, I mean, mine's similar. I don't take this stuff anywhere. It's very rare. Sometimes I'll take the Mother 32 to play along with at a gig with a loop pedal and, play guitar and trumpet and get a nice sort of loop set going on. And I've got the case for the Grandmother, and I would love to get that sort of more in play. But I despair, on this show constantly. It's very marginal free time. It's like, how do I do these? How many of these shows do you do a year?
I don't know, one a week. Isn't that about 50 plus a year?
Yeah, that's a lot. That's moving.
But it's cool that you got a space that we can get together in.
Oh yeah, no, I meant how many of the shows like Equinox do you do a year?
How many shows like
I was
Equinox?
like, you do that
I'm
every
sorry.
week? Whoa.
No.
And I gotta be honest with you, I missed a week recently.
That's okay, Sam.
It was sad. Yeah,
last year I did sound for 4 outdoor festivals. 2 in June, 1 in August, and 1 in September. So no, it's not my day job. My day job pays for my gear.
Right.
My gear acquisition syndrome. Let's see. I did a small private party last weekend, and the Equinox Festival's coming up. I'm helping some other people with their show next month in 2 weeks in June.
What's that? Is that public?
That is the Pangea Festival. It's the 16th year. It's in Anderson, South Carolina, at the Three Creeks Campground. Josh Wink is our headliner this year, as well as local regional favorite Alex Falk.
Okay, cool.
And there will be all Danley Sound Labs loudspeakers at this event.
Okay.
For the 2nd year in a row.
Nice. Does Charles Goldberg have anything to do with that? Isn't he down there?
Yeah, Charles Dolly. It's
right.
his PA and
Charles
another.
Goldberg?
He used to build Sub 37s, and now he does roofing.
Okay, right.
In Seneca.
Okay.
Asheville rent's expensive. It's hard to find work sometimes. A lot of people, they come to Asheville, work at Moog, get the gear, and get out of town and get on with your life.
That's right.
Get on with the next business.
Asheville is a complex beast. We don't need to get into the politics of Asheville, but I would love to at some point. So I gotta have you back sometime. Yeah,
absolutely, Sam. Thank you for asking, and thank you for having me on the show.
Of course,
tonight.
Yeah. No, I've been trying to get you on for a while. I'm so glad that you're here.
Great.
I really respect your vast knowledge of audio. We barely scratched the surface of it today. Is there anything else that you want to say or plug? Any wisdom to share? Any hanging threads? A last moment.
Practice before the concert. Just like
practice. Yeah, that's good.
Study before the test.
Definitely. So you heard it here. Well, again, practice makes perfect. Practice makes it imperfect, I guess. But closer to perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks again for masking. Staying COVID safe.
Yes.
Ever important
still out there. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, I feel like I stepped on you. Did you have anything else to say?
Nah, that's good.
Okay. All right, cool. Then we will be right back. This is Asheville 8 Note. I'm Sam Irvin. This is Lou Rawls. And yeah, thank you for watching. Thanks for coming on.
No problem.
Thank me for hosting. Okay. Yeah, let's go.
you.